My father said the family party was too crowded and told me not to bring my children, so I stepped back and took one cold action that left him in tears. My dad said, "This year's just too crowded. Maybe you and the kids sit it out." I said, "No problem." Then my daughter saw a video on Instagram. My cousin's friends, her boss, even a toddler from next door, all at my parents' house. I took a photo of the gifts we wrapped and texted it, then sent another message, dropping these off at Goodwill. 40 minutes later, my dad was at my door, breathless. I opened it and said, "It hurts to admit it, but they don't give a damn about me or my kids." I don't think they ever really did. Saying that out loud, even just in my head, felt like ripping something open that I'd spent years carefully sewing shut. I'd done the emotional gymnastics, told myself they were just old-fashioned, just distracted, just not expressive. I'd excused the missed birthdays, the forgotten names, the way they always acted like we were guests at their table instead of family. Through all of it, I still showed up with gifts, with casseroles, with gas in my tank, and my kids dressed in outfits they'd picked out just for grandma. So, when my dad called last week, I thought it was the usual check-in. He didn't even lead into it, no small talk. He just said, "This year's gotten a little crazy. More people than expected. Maybe you and the kids sit it out." That was it. Just like that. Like we were an optional add-on, like we were taking up space. I said, "No problem," and hung up. My hands were shaking. The living room still smelled like wrapping paper and scotch tape. I'd just finished packing up the anniversary gifts, it was their 30th. I'd gone all out, spent months stashing away money without the kids noticing, got them a Cartier watch, had it engraved. I was going to give it to them after dinner, thought it might finally mean something. I told the kids we were doing our own thing, said it like it was a treat. I ordered their favorite pizza, picked up extra marshmallows for Coco. I smiled through it like everything was fine. My son asked if Grandpa was sick. My daughter wanted to know if Grandma was mad. I told them no, nothing like that, just a change of plans. 2 days later, my daughter walked into the kitchen with her phone. She said, "Mom, look." It was an Instagram story, not one of those blurry, vague ones either. It was clear as day, their house fully decked out, balloons, flowers, a catered spread. My cousin's college friends were there, her boss, the family across the street with the toddler who once spit on our porch. Everyone, even people I didn't recognize. And right there in the background, laughing and drinking, were my parents. My mom wearing the scarf I bought her last Christmas. My dad holding up a glass of champagne like he was king of the hill. My daughter stared at the screen quietly for a long time, then asked, "Why didn't they want us there?" I didn't have an answer. I still don't. I walked into the living room, grabbed my phone, took a picture of the wrapped gifts sitting under the side table, the ones my kids had picked out and helped wrap. Then I texted the photo to my dad. No caption. A minute later, I sent a second message, dropping these off at Goodwill. I didn't expect anything. I didn't even stay by the phone. 40 minutes later, he was at my front door. I saw him through the window, pacing, jacket half on, no car in sight. He must have parked around the corner. I opened the door. He looked winded, like he'd run the whole way. He said we needed to talk. I didn't move. I just asked him, "What are you doing here?" In that moment, I wasn't his daughter anymore. I was a mother who had run out of patience. He stood there like he expected me to move aside, like everything could go back to normal if he just showed up in person and looked mildly regretful. I didn't budge. The door stayed half open, the cold air pushing in between us. He started talking fast, like that would help. He said things got a little bigger than expected, that he didn't plan the whole thing, that my cousin took care of the invites, that it wasn't about excluding me or the kids, it just happened that way. I didn't say anything for a few seconds because I needed to be sure I wouldn't snap. Then I asked him one question. The toddler from next door made the list. He shifted his weight, looked down like the ground was more comfortable than my face. Then he said something about how it wasn't meant to be personal, that we always take things too far, that I could have just called instead of sending a dramatic message. There was that phrase again. We, like my kids and I, are one blurry category he can dismiss together, like a stain he can't scrub out. He tried to smooth it over, said they were planning to call us the next day anyway. It's been a hectic week. He even said we could come by for cake that weekend, as if my daughter didn't already watch him give a toast without her, as if my son didn't already ask why Grandpa didn't want to see his drawing. So I told him about the watch, about how it took me months of cutting back, picking up extra shifts, saying no to things the kids wanted. I didn't want pity, I just wanted him to feel it, to know I gave him something real and he gave us nothing. He went quiet, that kind of quiet where you know the apology isn't coming. Then finally he said it, "You didn't have to do all that." Not, "Thank you," not "Sorry," Just a flat little reminder that everything I ever do for them is unnecessary in their eyes. That's when my daughter appeared behind me. She had socks on and was holding one of the gift bags, the one with the mug she made my mom in art class. She didn't say anything for a second, then asked, "Is Grandpa here to take the gifts now?" My dad looked at her like she was someone else's child, didn't even try to kneel down or hug her or say hi. Just stared like she'd caught him doing something embarrassing. I said, "No, he's not taking anything," and I closed the door. He stood there for a second. I watched through the peephole. He didn't knock again, just stood still for a moment, then walked off down the driveway. He didn't drive. I think he parked a few houses down so the neighbors wouldn't see his car. That's the kind of man he is, more embarrassed by a scene than ashamed of what caused it. The next morning, I woke up to a wall of text from my mom. She said I had crossed a line, that I blew things out of proportion, that my tone was completely inappropriate and I'd hurt their feelings. Then she said something that stuck with me all day: "Maybe it's better if we take some time away from each other." She didn't mention the kids once. That's when I made my decision. I took the Cartier watch out of the box and drove to the store to return it. I had to argue with the associate about the engraving, but eventually got most of the money back, enough to fix the water heater, enough to maybe take the kids somewhere for the weekend. They didn't want our gifts. Fine. They wouldn't get anything from us again. After I returned the watch, I expected silence. That's how it usually went. They'd go quiet, wait for me to feel bad, then slide back into my life like nothing happened. I thought maybe this time would be different, maybe they'd actually think about what they did, maybe they'd say something to the kids. But I should have known better. The message came 4 days later, no apology, no checking in, just a short text from my dad: "Are you still sending the mortgage this month?" Not even a question mark. I stared at it like I didn't understand the words, like they couldn't possibly be that oblivious, that selfish. For the past 4 months, I'd been quietly paying their mortgage, no fanfare, no announcements. They never asked me outright, just made vague comments about tight months and bad timing and how everyone's feeling the squeeze lately. I didn't tell the kids, didn't even tell my friends. I just did it because I thought that's what family does, even when it isn't returned, even when it hurts. I didn't respond. That evening, I got another message, this time from my mom. She said, "Just checking to make sure the mortgage didn't get delayed. We need to get the payment in by Friday." As if nothing had happened, as if I hadn't stood in my own doorway telling their granddaughter they didn't want our gifts. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, staring at my bank app, at the money I'd been setting aside like clockwork. It hit me then how automatic it had become, how they'd come to expect it, how I was being used, not just for convenience, but for emotional leverage. And they never even pretended to respect me for it. So I texted back, "No, I won't be sending it anymore." No explanation, no opening for a conversation, just a line they couldn't cross anymore. My phone rang immediately. I didn't answer. Then my mom sent a flood of messages asking why I was suddenly changing things, why I was bringing money into personal matters, how I could be so cruel over one misunderstanding. She said I should think of how this would affect the kids, like she hadn't just written them off 2 weeks earlier. I didn't answer any of them. The next morning, my dad sent a longer text. He said he didn't think I'd take it this far, that they never meant to hurt anyone, that they were trying their best and I should be the bigger person. I deleted it without reading the rest. That week, I sat down with my budget, canceled the automatic transfers, redirected everything back to my savings. For the first time in months, I didn't have to juggle bills to cover someone else's life. I bought new sneakers for my son, ordered my daughter the book series she'd been talking about. I cooked meals without doing mental math at the grocery store. I expected them to go quiet, that would have been easier, but they didn't. 2 weeks later, I got a call from the school, not from the front desk, from my daughter's teacher. She said, "Your mom came by this morning." It was just past noon when my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but I picked up anyway. It was my daughter's teacher. She sounded calm but careful, like she was measuring every word. She said, "Hi, Samantha. I just wanted to let you know that your mom showed up at the school today." I went completely still. She explained that my mom came to the front office and said she was dropping off a small package for my daughter. At first it sounded harmless, but then she asked to see her. When they told her that wasn't allowed without prior approval, she didn't leave. She said she was just a grandmother, that she wasn't a stranger, that she had a right to see her granddaughter. She didn't yell, but she kept pushing. When the office refused, she finally left, but not before handing over a small gift-wrapped box with my daughter's name on it. I was at the school in 20 minutes. The receptionist handed me the box, already open for safety. It was wrapped in familiar paper, the same pattern we used when we first wrapped the gifts they refused to accept. Inside was the ceramic mug my daughter made in art class, the one we painted together, bright red with a little sunflower and "Love You Grandma" written around the rim in uneven gold paint. Taped to the bottom was a folded piece of paper torn from a notepad. It said, "I didn't mean for things to get this far. You're being unreasonable. The kids should be allowed to decide for themselves." No apology, no regret, just another message wrapped in guilt. I took it all, box, note, mug, and walked back to the car, trying to hold in the sick feeling in my chest. It wasn't just the manipulation. It was the fact that she'd gone around me, showed up at my daughter's school like she had some right to cut through the boundaries I'd clearly drawn. When we got home that night, I didn't tell my daughter what happened. I just said Grandma dropped off something she forgot to give us. She nodded slowly and didn't ask more. But the whole evening she was quiet, sat through dinner barely touching her food, stared at the movie like it was background noise. Kids always know. After they went to bed, I texted my mom, "You are not to come near the school again. If you want to talk, do it right. Otherwise, stay away. This is a boundary. Respect it." The reply didn't come from her, it came from my dad. He wrote, "If you think you're cutting us off and keeping our grandkids, you've got another thing coming." I stared at the screen, read it twice, took a screenshot, and emailed it to myself. I forwarded it to a lawyer friend with a note that said, "Just in case." I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my filing cabinet and pulled out every record I had, the mortgage payments, the transfer confirmations, the texts where he hinted at needing help. I printed them, labeled them, started a folder. I never thought I'd be the type to need this kind of backup. But that text wasn't a plea, it was a warning. And it was the moment I stopped being afraid of what cutting them off might look like. 5 days passed since my mom showed up at the school, and the silence was louder than anything. No texts, no calls, no random messages pretending to be casual. Just a thick, dragging quiet, the kind that feels like it's waiting for something to explode. Then Saturday came. The knock wasn't loud, not urgent, just 3 solid taps on the front door. I looked through the peephole, and there they were, my parents, my mom holding a folder, my dad standing stiff behind her, jaws set like this was going to be a negotiation and he was ready to fight. I didn't open it right away. First, I went upstairs and turned the TV on in the kids' room, told them to stay up there and not open the door no matter what. Then I went back down and stepped outside, closing the door behind me. No hello, no small talk. My dad jumped straight in, "We came to talk. We need to fix this before things get ugly." It wasn't a plea, it was a warning. I didn't say anything, just waited. My mom handed me the folder. I opened it. Inside were 2 envelopes, each labeled with my kids' names. The handwriting was hers, in those tight little letters she uses when she's trying to be taken seriously. She said they were letters just to explain our side of things, that they didn't want the kids to think they'd been abandoned. I told her they had no right to send anything directly to my children, that what happened wasn't a misunderstanding, it was a decision, a pattern, one that had gone on for years and finally hit the wall. Then she said something that made my stomach turn. "We didn't think you'd actually go through with this. You always forgive." That's what it was. That's why they pushed and pushed. They believed I'd always be there, that I'd eventually cave, show up with an apology casserole, bring the kids over like nothing happened. They counted on me being soft. My dad finally spoke again. "We've been under pressure. The mortgage is behind again. If you're really cutting that off, it's going to destroy us." There was the real reason they showed up, not for the kids, not for an apology, not even for reconciliation. "Money." I said, "You'll figure it out. Just like I have." He looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. Then his voice dropped into that bitter, defensive tone I knew too well. "You're punishing your own parents over a party. Do you know how ridiculous that is?" I laughed once, not because it was funny, but because I couldn't believe they were still trying to spin it. "This isn't about a party," I said. "It's about a lifetime." They left not long after. No explosion, no slammed doors, just a tight-lipped retreat. I stood on the porch and watched them walk to their car without looking back. That night, at exactly 9:03 p.m., my mom texted, "You've made your decision. I hope you're proud. We won't be reaching out again. Don't contact us unless it's an emergency." I stared at it. It didn't even hurt the way I thought it would. I didn't cry, I didn't panic. But I did feel something break loose inside me, something old, something I'd held on to for too long. Later, as I was tucking the kids in, my daughter wrapped her arms around me and whispered, "Even if they don't come back, we're okay. We have you." My son mumbled, already half asleep, "We have the fun house now." I kissed their foreheads and turned off the light. And I realized they were right, we were okay. It's been just over 3 weeks since that last message, since they drew their line in the sand and told me not to contact them unless it was an emergency. No one has said a word since, no surprise calls, No vague texts pretending everything's fine, no cards for the kids, no curious questions passed through relatives. Just nothing. And I won't lie, at first the silence felt like something was missing, not them exactly, just the noise I was used to, the constant tension, the watching and waiting for the next jab dressed up as concern. When it stopped, it felt like walking through a house you used to live in, quiet but heavy with memories. I've had to remind myself daily, this is peace, not loneliness, not a cold war, just peace. The kids adjusted faster than I expected, maybe because they were already halfway there before I even noticed. My daughter's been writing these little stories and taping them to her wall, stories about a girl and her magical dog who can travel through time. She told me the other night that the girl always wins because she remembers who she is, even when people lie to her. My son built a fort in the living room out of blankets and chairs. He says it's the no sad people zone. They eat snacks in there and watch old cartoons. And every time I peek in, I think about how lucky I am that they didn't let bitterness take root. They still laugh, they still believe in good things. A few nights ago, I found the box of gifts we'd wrapped before all of this. I thought I donated everything, but apparently one bag got pushed behind the coats in the closet. Inside was a frame my daughter made with a photo of the four of us from 2 years ago, back when things still felt fixable. She had decorated it with tiny foam hearts and glued a note to the back, for Grandma and Grandpa's anniversary. Please don't cry. I sat there on the living room floor for what felt like hours, cradling that little handmade frame in my hands. I wasn't crying, just sitting, letting the weight of it all settle over me like a heavy blanket. It wasn't only about that one party, that single exclusion that finally broke something inside me. No, it was about so many years of the same quiet rejection, always on the edges of their lives, always convenient when they needed something, but never truly seen or cherished for who we were. I'd arrive with my children in tow, hearts full of excitement and arms loaded with thoughtful gifts or homemade food, hoping each time that this visit would feel different, that we'd finally be welcomed as family rather than polite guests intruding on someone else's celebration. Yet more often than not, we'd leave with that familiar ache, feeling as though we'd accidentally wandered into a gathering that wasn't meant for us. The hardest truth to accept is that, had I not drawn this line now, the pattern would have continued indefinitely. They would have kept taking my efforts for granted, offering crumbs of affection in return, expecting me to keep showing up no matter how many times they made us feel small. If I'd stayed silent and forgiving as always, nothing would have changed. They'd repeat the same choices, the same oversights, the same casual dismissals, because it had always worked before. Their silence these past weeks isn't born from missing us or reflecting on their actions. It's because, for the first time, they've lost the control they were used to having over me. I'm no longer the compliant daughter who absorbed every slight, pasted on a smile, and came running whenever they needed help. That version of me was easy for them to love, or at least to tolerate, because she never demanded anything in return. But this new me, the one who protects her children and herself, who refuses to beg for a place at their table, that's unfamiliar territory for them, and they don't know how to navigate it. Of course it still hurts. There are quiet moments when the urge hits me unexpectedly. I'll see the kids laughing as they build a snowman outside the window, or my daughter will do something hilariously silly that reminds me of my own childhood, and my fingers instinctively reach for my phone to share the photo or video. I want to send updates about school plays, funny stories, upcoming birthdays, little bridges back to what used to be. But then the memories flood in, the party we weren't invited to, the gifts returned without thanks, the mortgage requests that came right after the hurt, the way they went around me to reach my children. I pause, lower the phone, and let the moment pass. It's not anger holding me back anymore, it's clarity, a protective instinct that reminds me what happens when I ignore the boundaries I've finally set. They turned away first, chose convenience and appearances over us, and now they act as though I'm the one who shattered everything by standing up for myself. That reversal stings, but I'm learning to see it for what it is: deflection. This is simply where we are right now. I can't predict the future. I don't know if hardship will eventually soften their pride, if one day they'll reach out with genuine remorse, or if the distance will harden into something permanent. Time will reveal whatever it's meant to reveal. What I do know with absolute certainty is that any reconciliation would require real change. They can't walk back through the same old door expecting the same old doormat daughter who excuses everything. If they ever choose to return, it will have to be with accountability, respect, and effort, something different entirely, or not at all. Until then, or unless then, it's just the three of us building our own little world. We have lazy Saturday mornings in pajamas, impromptu pizza and movie nights, handmade ornaments that aren't perfect but are filled with our laughter, playlists turned up loud while we dance around the kitchen, and batches of cookies that always come out a bit over brown but taste like home anyway. Our life isn't flawless. Some days are exhausting, some evenings I still feel the echo of loss. But it's authentic, it's peaceful, and it belongs entirely to us. And that feels like enough.